Hey guys, Dave with Gen3D Tech here. Today we're going to be checking out the Xtrfy MZ1 Wireless. Let's check it out. So first off, I'd like to thank Xtrfy for providing this review sample. I've had it for a couple weeks now and I've really been enjoying my time using it. Back in December, I actually bought the original MZ1, which is a wired mouse. And at first, I'll be honest, I really couldn't get used to this mouse. I tried for a couple weeks and I ended up just kind of putting it away because I could never get used to the shape and feeling of the mouse. Now, I've used a ton of different mice since last December, which is when shortly after I started reviewing mice. And as you see, I have a ton of mice, and I think just maybe my play style and grip style has changed quite a bit. Now the MZ1 feels extremely good in my hand, and I aim really well with it. Now there is a difference. It is slight, but there are differences between the wired version and the wireless version. First of all, I mean, obviously this is wired and the other one's wireless. But other than that, there is a little bit less RGB in the wireless version, but that's honestly not that big of a deal. Shape-wise, to me, they're pretty much identical. However, the balance of the mouse is a bit different. It feels a little front heavy on the wireless version, where this feels a little bit more balanced. And weight wise, I believe when I weighed them, I think they're supposed to be the same weight at 61 grams, but I believe my wireless one was maybe a gram heavier, but they feel very close. There's a couple mice that I have multiple copies of, and sometimes the switches are slightly different from one to the other. Sometimes there's a little bit of variation. The mouse 1 and mouse 2 feel a bit snappier on the wireless version to me, but it's really close. The mouse wheel feels the same. The side buttons actually feel quite a bit snappier on the wireless version. The bottom looks pretty much almost identical. They have the same PTFE feet, which I think are really nice. And then down here, there's the settings that you can make all your changes. So both of these mice don't have any software, so you're able to do everything with these different switches and buttons. In the box, there's a fold-out diagram that shows how to do everything, and it's very self-explanatory. I'm not really going to go through all those different things. If you get this mouse, you just have to pull that out and make the changes. Some people like that, not having software. I personally would rather see a small piece of software where you make the changes and you can even uninstall it. But I did go through and make sure that the polling rate is correct and all the other settings are correct. So the other difference is also the sensor. The wired version is a 3389 sensor, and the wireless is the ever popular 3370 sensor. Now, I probably would have liked to have seen something like the 3395 in here, but honestly, the 3370, especially if it's implemented well, is a very good sensor, and you're hard pressed to find the difference between that and a 3395. So I don't think you lose a whole lot by going with the 3370. Just like I said, I feel like the implementation of the switches is slightly better than the wired version, but again, that could just be a variation. They both use KL 8.0 switches, which are one of the most common switches that are being used currently on most mice. The other thing that this thing has is it does have a smaller, lower profile hump. And I'll go ahead and show how you change that here in just a minute. So here's the smaller hump, and they give you this little tiny screwdriver for swapping it out. So there's just one screw you have to undo, and that's right here. Voila. And then all you got to do is just, and you can see on the wired version, which has the hump that I took off, there's a good bit of difference there. I'm not going to bother putting the screw in there because I prefer the larger hump personally, but I want to show you what it looks like. So with that not having that hump there, it really doesn't hit my palm. So if you are just trying to fingertip this mouse, then this is probably the hump that you want to use, because it's not going to accidentally hit the other parts of your hand. So it just depends on how you grip this mouse. If you're just a completely fingertip or claw without actually touching your palm, then this is definitely the hump that you want to use. Me personally, I like having it rest up against my palm to help give me a little bit more control. And with this, it's really awkward to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bigger hump on there. But it's nice that they give you that option, and you can kind of play around with it and see which one works best for you, because it does make it feel like practically a completely different mouse when you have that smaller hump on there. The M4 Wireless also has the same thing, and I definitely appreciate that Xtrfy is doing this, because it basically, they could have easily just made two versions of this mouse and sold it that way, but instead they gave you the option to where it's like getting two mice in one, really. So yeah, it holds in my palm like this when you got the end that touches the top of my palm right there with this bigger hump. And for me, I can get a little bit better control. It just feels a little bit more relaxed that way. But certainly, if you buy this mouse, go ahead and give both a try and see which one works out best for you. Now, as for the scroll wheel, I like the scroll wheel quite a bit. It doesn't make a lot of noise. It feels pretty tactile, and it feels nice and smooth. No complaints on the scroll wheel. This, like I said, the side buttons are nice and clicky. They're some of my favorite side buttons on a mouse. And then you've also got this button up here, and you've got this button up here. And currently, I've got this set to be a DPI button. Now, if you change it to RGB, and you press this button, you can go through the different RGB modes. And again, to switch it back to the DPI setting, you just change it to CPI. And of course, it has a USB-C, which most modern mice have now. And then the buttons have very little side-to-side travel on them, which is nice. Just a little bit of pre-travel and virtually no post-travel. And another thing that the Xtrfy mice have had lately is this little adjustment right here. If you see the screw here and here, you can unscrew them, and then you can basically move the weight forward a little bit or back to try and adjust it to your liking. And it does make a small difference, but I found that on so far the two mice that I have that have this feature, the M4 Wireless and then the MZ1 Wireless, I just prefer where the default is, right in the center. But you can certainly mess with these. Just be careful, because I have heard if you move it around too much that you can actually break this, and then they get stuck where you're at. So just keep that in mind. I would probably just move it once and then leave it there. And if you're happy with the way it feels at the default, then I would probably just leave it right there. Now, this is a pretty small mouse, and which is intentionally supposed to be that way. Rocket Jump Ninja, who invented this mouse or helped Xtrfy come up with this mouse, firmly believes that using a smaller mouse will give you better aim. And this is definitely a unique shaped mouse also. If you look very closely, you'll see that the mouse trigger buttons are kind of concaved in, so your fingers kind of rest inside them, which I like quite a bit. The other thing is that this mouse is pretty much designed for him personally. I have a 19 by 10 centimeter hands, and I believe he has similar size hands, so I found that the mouse does fit my hand very well. But if you have large hands or really small hands, you may have a difficult time getting this mouse to work perfectly. Perhaps maybe they'll make a larger size version of this, which will help people with larger size hands enjoy it. But even Xtrfy admits this is a pretty unique mouse. It's almost a niche mouse in my opinion, because most likely you're either going to really love this mouse or you're going to hate it. And like I said, when I tried this, I gave it a good 2 weeks and I did not like it at all. I'm not sure exactly what happened since then. Put a little bit more time into the wired mouse just to make sure that it's not any different than the wireless one. And it feels pretty much the same, other than you have a little bit more freedom because you don't have this cord, even though the cord on this is pretty good. And honestly, you know, you can probably pick up this mouse for $30 used, and it's an excellent mouse. I do know in the beginning there was some USB disconnect issues, I think because maybe the cable was coming loose. I got mine after it had been out a little while, so I never had any problems with it, but I also have only put in a few weeks of time with this mouse. So again, this is a very unique shaped mouse, and it may be hard to tell whether or not you're going to like this mouse or not. If you haven't used this before, you may find that you hate it, or you just may never be able to get used to it. So maybe it's a good idea to pick up something like this used and decide whether or not you even want to get this in the wireless. Or maybe one of your buddies has this already and they went and bought this. You could borrow their wired version just to kind of see if you like it or not. But like I said, I will say, if I wasn't reviewing mice and I had made my decision based on this, I wouldn't have ordered this, just because initially I didn't have a good time with this mouse, and I thought that 2 weeks was enough time putting into it to get used to it. And I don't know if I ever would have got used to it if I had just tried to stick through it. But again, something changed. I think it's just using a bunch of different mice has changed my grip style from what it used to be, because when I was testing this mouse, I had just started using more than one mouse. Typically, I would find one mouse that I liked, and I'd stick with it until it broke, and that was usually about every 2 years. And then I started buying a whole bunch of mice and testing them out, and this is one of the first ones that I bought, and it just didn't work with me. But I was coming from the G502, honestly, which is a big transition to this mouse, and I think that's why I couldn't get used to it. But I've had several months of testing lots of different shapes and sizes and weights, and now when I picked this one up for the first time, it was a completely different experience, and I love this thing right from the get-go. Now, when I was testing this mouse, I was also testing a couple new mouse pads that I found that were extremely good mouse pads. The Dornfinger Soft Cadura pads and the new Vancer Ice pad. And this mouse worked really good with all of those pads. And I'm not exactly sure if it was the mouse or the mouse pads or a combination. I think it's a combination of both, but a lot of my average scores have actually gone up 15% using this mouse. I think it's the mouse, because when I went back to some of my other mice, I wasn't doing as good. And like I said, I think Rocket Jump Ninja is pretty much right. When you use a smaller mouse, you typically will aim better. Speaking of smaller mice, then of course you got the X-Lite Mini. Side by side, they're very similar sizes. This one's obviously got a bigger hump on it, but both mice I do really well with. But if I had to choose one, I would take the MZ1 Wireless, and mostly that's because it's a symmetrical mouse. The Pulsar X2 that's coming out soon, I definitely think that the mini version of that mouse is probably going to be extremely good for my aim also. Very much looking forward to the X2 mouse. Now this mouse is not exactly cheap. It comes in at $119, basically $120, and it comes in white and black, and you can get different color shells for it. I think there's about 8 to 10 different color shells, and it's $10 for the shell add-on. I believe purple is currently the best-selling color add-on for the MZ1. They also have grip tape available for it, and that's actually what I would probably like to get for this, because over here my pinky rubs on these holes and it kind of rubs it a little bit raw. So I would like to get the grip tape for this because that would fix that issue. The other thing is when you do order something from Xtrfy, if you're in the United States, it will take a little bit of time to get there, so you got to be a little patient. At $120, it is about $20 more than I think it should be going for, but it is still cheaper than the Logitech Superlight and the Razer V2 Pro. The Xtrfy M42 is pretty much the same internals as this mouse. It's just a different shape. And that mouse is only $99, so it's cheaper by $20. My guess is they probably have to give a cut to Rocket Jump Ninja, which is why it's maybe a little bit more expensive. But the one thing that this has over the M42, because the M42, there are other mice that are similar shape to that, but there is no other mouse that is like the MZ1 for sure. So the question is, do I recommend this mouse to other people? My answer is, well, it depends. Because, like I said, this is a very unique mouse, and it may not work for you. You may get it, and you may absolutely hate it, and then the next person will absolutely love this mouse. So the first thing that I would consider is your hand size. If you have a larger than 21 centimeter hands, this may be too small for you. If you have to palm a mouse, then this is also not a mouse for you. However, maybe if you have really tiny hands, and you might be able to palm this. But when I palm it, my fingers go over the edge, which is really awkward. All in all, you will take a chance if you've never used this shape that when you get it, you may not like it. But certainly give this mouse some time. Don't just pick it up and then, because it's probably going to feel really weird. But don't just pick it up and give it a couple days and say, oh, I don't like this mouse. You got to really put some time into this mouse. And if you do and you get used to it, then you will be rewarded, because this is an excellent aiming mouse. And personally, I thought when I was going to be reviewing this mouse that I was just going to say, this mouse is not really for me, but there's probably people that this will work well for. But I'm actually very surprised that this mouse is actually working extremely well for me, because like I said, that wasn't the case when I originally tried the wired version back in December. So for me, right now, I would consider this my main. If I'm not testing a mouse, this is the mouse I'm going to be reaching for. And what I love about this mouse is it's unique. You know, there's not a lot of unique mice on the market. Most mice are a copy of another mice, or just a slight refinement of a shape. There's not a lot of different shapes out on the market. And this is definitely a unique shape. But because of that, I think the reason that it is unique is because it's not going to work out for a lot of people. And some people will just never put enough time into using this mouse to get the most out of it. If you're a mouse user that has multiple mice and you like to have one for different occasions, then yeah, I highly recommend this mouse for you, because I think it should belong in every first-person shooter gamer's inventory. Again, unless you've got giant hands. But like I said, maybe Xtrfy will make a larger version of this mouse for those people. But I kind of doubt it a little bit because, like I said, this is kind of a niche mouse, and large mice are also kind of niche. So for Xtrfy to come out with a niche product, that's probably just hopeful thinking on my part. Even though a larger one, I probably wouldn't use that. But I do know there are some larger hand reviewers that probably would like to see that. Now I do think they could probably get rid of the RGB and maybe decrease the size of the battery a little bit. It does have really good battery life. On a full charge, I think I got about 5 days of use out of this mouse. But I could definitely see them reducing the battery size, getting rid of the RGB, maybe getting this to like 58 grams or something. But at 62 grams, I don't really have a problem with that. It feels very lightweight to me. And I'm sure Bearded Bob will probably get this and do a video on how to get the weight reduced on it. And I'll definitely be watching that. And shout out to Bearded Bob. If you have never seen any of his videos and you're interested in do-it-yourself weight reductions, definitely check out his channel. The dude's a hero of mine. Anyways, let's watch a little bit of gameplay footage.
They stole the robot from us! Get it back! The barricade's moving! Let's stop them! Come on! Too spicy for you? They took the robot! Get us back! Twat!
Hello there. Let's move. Tactical termination.
Another thing that I'd like to mention is the build quality of this mouse. It's very exceptional. It doesn't really creak when you push on it. It's very solid. And also the plastic feels a lot more premium than, say, the M42 right here. Actually, I had to re-record the very ending because for some reason it didn't have audio, and in that time my M42 came in, so I did get to compare the two, and the M42 is a little bit bigger, and the plastic feels a little bit different, but other than that it has pretty much the same internals. It is a nice mouse in my opinion. It's a little bit of a safer shape, so it might be a better choice if you're not sure about the MZ1. But I do prefer the MZ1 personally. Anyways, that's about all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like. I always appreciate that. And if you haven't subbed, go ahead. If not, no big deal, as always. I got lots more to come, more than I can handle. They just keep coming, but I'll try and get the important ones out and then get the stragglers out in between. But anyways, that's it, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Later.